first movie got into Sundance, and then boom, it exploded from there. Like those were the guys that I like looked up to, and then you sort of come to realize that like those guys are like that's like LeBron James, like that's going to the pros right after high school, and it doesn't happen all the time. And I'm like Bill Cartwright, man. I'm on the Bulls team, but I'm kind of like like I'm working my way up, getting better and better as my career goes. And I think if you take the pressure of yourself off as a filmmaker to say, I don't need my first movie to be this monster hit. I don't need to put my everything of my life into this, and if it doesn't work, then I'm never going to do it again. You can do things slowly and build your career up, build your skill set up,
Today on the show, we are joined with director Andy Palmer to talk about his latest film, The Re-Education of Molly Singer, that is presented by Lionsgate Films and is currently in theaters and out on digital on demand. And what can I say? This was such a fun comedy. Puts an old man like me in the mind state of, what if I could go back to college and mentor somebody? And this flick captures that what if and takes you on a hilarious journey. And around talking about the movie and some awesome behind the scenes stuff, Andy gives us some great advice for some aspiring directors. And also, what if he could Molly Singer himself at the beginning of his film journey? What would he do differently? What would he tell himself? I really enjoyed talking to this guy. And yeah, let's get right into it.
John, what's up, man?
Nice to meet you, man. How you doing today?
You. I'm great. Great. It's hump day,
Hell yeah, Wednesday. Let's go. Even one thing I really enjoyed about watching this movie too is a lot of me and my friends had like a really crazy college experience, and we're old now, and we've had the conversation like what would happen if you go back. And even I do love the concept of like also being somebody's mentor, because obviously after it you have all this experience like from the mistakes and everything. And I just kind of want to know, did you have like a similar college or university experience of just like craziness?
A little bit. And it's funny because I think that Molly Singer kind of represents what I would have done in college had I to do it over again, right? I was like, I kind of figured out very early on like what I wanted to do. I wanted to like be a filmmaker. That sort of happened freshman year in college, and then I became sort of singularly like focused on that. And I had fun and I had great friends and stuff like that. But I think I definitely like didn't have as many hijinks as I could have, or done as many adventures as I could have. And so yeah, Molly is like sort of that, almost like that do-over for me, because it was so fun to be back on campus and be around kids that age and stuff like that, and like have my pop culture references mean nothing to them, and I was like, oh my god, I'm the old man at the table now, but it was fun to kind of be around that energy for sure.
Yeah, that's really cool. And even like as you mentioned, Molly, I thought Britt did such an amazing job. And even with Nico casted as her friend and everything. And kind of what went into the casting process of like finding these two, because I feel like their chemistry was like super special and awesome. Like it felt so natural and hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, just a testament to how talented and amazing they are, not only as actors, but they're just both amazing people. And so they sort of hit it off right away, just through the sheer force of them just being so cool. But no, the casting process was like, it was sort of this process of like, wouldn't it be great if? And it was like, wouldn't it be great if we got like Britt Robertson? She was like, I think the second person that got the script. And then 2 weeks later, I was on a Zoom with her, and she was like, yeah, this is fun. I like this. And I was like, I couldn't even believe it. And then when we were working on the script, Kevin and Todd and I kind of revamping it, because it had been written years earlier, and it was actually written for a male lead. It was called The Re-Education of David Singer. And so we all decided we wanted to kind of flip it. It would just be a little bit fresher, kind of modernize the humor a little bit. And so when we were talking about the best friend, which was sort of like in the original script, sort of more Stifler-esque sort of best friend, his name was Haas. I was like, yeah, we should, make this like, I don't know, like somebody like a Nico Santos, like I literally said that. And then his rep submitted for it, not knowing any of that. And I was like, go get this man. He is the one.
Nice. Yeah, and yeah, their chemistry was like so natural. Like it was like very like believable like throughout the
Yeah.
movie that they were just buddies. And I feel like Nico had some of my favorite like one-liners just kind of sprinkled in throughout the whole thing. And yeah, you mentioned like kind of like revamping it to make it modern. And I noticed like we're both a bit older guys. You have like the TikTok stuff going on.
Yeah,
Was
yeah.
that like a challenge, or did you have like a little young consultant and stuff
Well,
like
I
that?
think I thank my wife for at least she doesn't like perform anything on TikTok, but she is very into like scrolling TikTok. And then so we have this sort of ritual at night after dinner. She goes, "Okay, it's TikTok video time." And she kind of like scoots next to me on the couch and shows me the day's, videos. So luckily I was aware of it because I am not currently on the TikTok. I'm barely on the Instagram. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, so that was sort of a trial by fire. And yes, you do have to ask kids like, would they say this, or how would this, be? Because even Elliot is not really at the beginning. He's doing his like MMA in front of the camera, and I was like, that's not really how you use TikTok. I don't. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, just totally exaggerated. And one thing
Yeah.
that kind of brought myself back was a lot of the games they were playing, and like Molly kind of like being like the coach, where it's like King's Cup
Yep.
and like all that. And even like I was hoping that people still did that in college, if they do or not, but that was like such a throwback to me.
We're gonna definitely find out. In a week
Yeah.
or so, people are like, "Oh my god!" Either it's gonna be a bunch of old people like us going like, "I remember those days," or the kids are gonna be like, "We do that now." So, but yeah, King's Cup was my game. That was my jam in college. We had this really cool house off campus that my buddy bought, and I think my rent was $200 a month. It was the biggest steal ever. And yes, we threw some amazing parties, and King's Cup was my jam.
Yeah, had a definitely a similar experience. And even watching the film, and at the end like seeing all the blooper reels that put a smile on my face. And that must have been like a very fun set to be on. I
Really
can
was.
imagine there was probably a lot more you didn't put in. And do you want to let me know a little bit about the vibe going through the movie journey with all these
Yeah,
people?
it was. I mean, it was by far the most fun set I've ever been on, and in a lot of different ways. There was a lot of like craziness going on because we're shooting in Atlanta at a time when everything had started to opened up. As COVID protocols were starting to ease a little bit and stuff like that. And so there were a lot of movies going on in Atlanta when we were shooting there. And so behind the scenes, there was like a little bit of chaos, and like we would lose crew members to much bigger films. Like all the Marvel shows were shooting.
Oh,
Tyler
damn.
Perry was shooting a bunch of stuff. Like it was just like there was a lot of competition for crew. And so there was that sort of stuff. But our core crew producers, line producers, and stuff like that were all amazing. But the cast are just what they just made it so easy. Everybody was just they were so great. Nobody was late. Nobody missed a mark. It was just they're such professionals. And then you're just having fun. So it's like once the cameras started rolling, we were just having fun. And yes, my script supervisor Annie would punch me because I would laugh and like they would say something and I would laugh and I would almost blow the take because I'm like, I'm in Video Village a little ways away, but close enough that the sound guy was gonna whack me with his boom if I did it again because they're hysterical. And Nico especially is just he's a treasure trove of one-liners. And yeah, the hardest part to edit of the movie was the blooper reel because it was like Tim and I are like, I don't know, what do we put in? What do we not put in? I mean, it's just we could have done 2 rounds of that if we wanted to.
Yeah, for sure. It seemed like just such a fun vibe. And I think what's cool about talking to you today, a lot of the interviews I've done as late with the directors were with people who directed either like action or horror. And it's
Yeah.
cool to kind of get like a bit of a comedy perspective. And what do you personally think is like maybe some advice or something for somebody who's like trying to get into directing their own comedy film and everything?
Yeah, comedy's tricky in the realm of depending on how you want to go, and it really depends on your goals. And I actually came up doing horror movies. So like my
Ah, yeah.
first, like my first 6 movies were some derivative of horror films, because horror is this amazing genre where you don't need to spend a lot of money and you can cast unknown actors and still have this level of credibility if you make a good fun scary movie. And so that was sort of our theory. It was like, hey, listen, it's hard to like be able to like sell a comedy when you don't have a Britt Robertson or a Nico Santos and stuff like that. It's just a genre that's more difficult to sell. So I kind of like worked my way up, and my movie Funhouse Massacre was a horror comedy, and then Witness Infection was a horror comedy. So I was always sort of like angling in that direction. But yeah, I would say that if you're going to do a comedy and it's going to be your first movie, then do it as inexpensively as possible. I'm talking like iPhones, and do your own version of the Big Chill where everybody's hanging out at a cabin for a weekend, where you're in like one isolated location and you just have nothing but blocking of scenes and working with amazing talented people. And that way it's like you're sort of mitigating your risk and still working your way up to being able to work with bigger and bigger names, which is where then you can sort of comedies are a little bit easier to get out into the marketplace and stuff like that. So start small. There's nothing stopping anyone anymore. I mean, whether it be an iPhone or like, I mean, I just saw there's a Chinese company called Zcam. They have this amazing cinema camera. It's $1,500. It's nothing. And the thing is, this powerhouse cinema machine. And I'm like, there's just nothing stopping anybody anymore.
Yeah, it's insane how everything's moving. And even like a handful of years ago, like one of my favorite monster movies, Shin Godzilla, came out. It was from
Yeah.
Japan. And I remember just seeing one thing. I'm like, oh, I love this scene. And then I saw the making of come on like YouTube. And it was literally the director was like in a subway train with his phone, recorded that,
Yeah.
and then they just added like
Yeah.
like digital Godzilla, like, but the quality of like what you have in your pocket is amazing. And I also think that's great advice too, because I do meet a lot of people who are trying to get into like making their own films or going for their first one, and they think they need to take out a loan or
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
spend all this money. But sometimes like you said, you can just take your own resources and roll with it.
Yeah, yeah. I think that it's just like and it really depends on who you are as a filmmaker. And there are filmmakers. I always liken myself like, I look at the guy. I think the thing that I had to overcome was this idea that like I didn't have to be this like the guy that hit right away. Like there was this, because when you're a filmmaker, you're like the people I idolize are like Soderbergh and Kevin Smith and Edward Burns, all these guys that had like their first movie got into Sundance and then boom, it exploded from there. Like those were the guys that I like looked up to. And then you sort of come to realize that like those guys are like, that's like LeBron James. Like that's going to the pros right after high school. And it doesn't
Yeah.
happen all the time. And I'm like Bill Cartwright, man. I'm on the Bulls team, but I'm kind of like like I'm working my way up, getting better and better as my career goes. And I think if you take the pressure of yourself off as a filmmaker to say, I don't need my first movie to be this monster hit. I don't need to put my everything of my life into this. And if it doesn't work, then I'm never going to do it again. You can do things slowly and build your career up, build your skill set up.
Yeah, that's amazing. And maybe like it's cool that you mentioned that you were like doing horror at the beginning. If you could like kind of go back and Molly Singer your own career at the beginning of like your journey,
Yeah, yeah.
what would you tell your younger self stepping into this world?
It's I figured out my freshman year in college that I wanted to be a filmmaker because I'd always wanted to be an actor, and I declared as a theater major and then went to my first theater class with kids that had probably been doing it, much more intensively and much more professionally than I did. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm terrible at this. And so I sort of segued into film in that regard. And then so I remember looking up to guys that had come in up like through advertising. Because when I was in college, it was like, the big guys were like music videos were huge, and there was like a lot of like, high end commercials, and there were a lot of filmmakers that had gotten in that. And my college didn't have a film program, but they had an advertising program. And I was like, well, maybe I'll go through advertising and I'll start in commercials and work my way up, right? And I remember asking my advertising teacher if that was a wise choice. He goes, oh yeah. I was like, so you don't think I should go to film school? And he goes, no, 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 that's for cameramen. And I was like, oh, okay. And so then I get out and like I sort of learned that I probably should have gone to film school because it did take me longer to like understand set protocol and all these sort of things I had to learn on the fly, and much to the chagrin of many of my crew members, I'm sure. And so, yeah, I think if I had it to do over again, I probably would have gone back to film school.
That's so cool that you said that. I have a very similar path. I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I'm like, oh, I'm kind of creative. I went into creative advertising, and
Yep.
one day, they had a project where I picked up a camera, and like you mentioned, like I fell in love with like filming stuff, and now like 15 years later, like I'm in productions and all this, but
Yep.
it took a longer time to get there, where
Yes. Yes.
maybe I could have skipped some steps, but I wouldn't trade the journey for anything too,
and
because
and that's the same, and like in regards to, like, I met amazing friends that I still hold dear to this day, and there's so many stories in Molly Singer from my time at Northern Arizona. So I was like, I don't know, I probably would have gone to film school, but I also would have missed out on a lot of those adventures.
yeah, and yeah, it's cool to hear that perspective and everything about your story. And are you working on another film now, or are you just focused on promoting Molly Singer?
Molly, we're kind of forefront, and then I also edit a lot. So I'm actually editing a show for CW right now called F Boy Island, which is like this hyper comedic version of The Bachelor, and it's amazing. It's like our third season, and yeah, and I enjoy that immensely because it's just the crew and everybody are amazing.
Is that the one with Nikki
Nikki
Glazer?
Glazer, yeah.
Awesome.
So we
Yeah.
were, yeah. So he did HBO for 2 seasons, and then HBO dropped it, but then CW picked it up. So it'll be, and we're actually doing F Boy and F Girl Island. So there's now a spinoff, and F Girl Island is insane. Like, I just started it, and I'm like, this is gonna be nuts. Like, it's gonna be, it's like, it's really like funny, and the cast is really good and stuff like that. So yeah, so I'm doing that, and then I have a project that I'm trying to get off the ground that I wrote. It'll be like the first one that I kind of that's like I have my stamp on fully as a writer, with my buddy Ben Bagley, who wrote Funhouse Massacre, and it's a family comedy, but set in the world of professional bass fishing. As it being a hugely popular sport, I figured, why not, right?
Yeah, I'm already very intrigued. I just love how wacky that sounds and everything, and yeah, that just sounds so fun.
It's called Bite Me. It's NASCAR with gills, my friend.
Well, amazing. Well, it was fun to chat with you this
Oh,
morning.
Sean, what a pleasure, man.
Yeah, and
Do
hopefully
you
when
work
that
in work in production too, and film and stuff like that?
mostly like it started with like live events, and
Oh, cool.
now it's kind of segued into like a jack of all trades type of thing. And I'm actually just wrapped up my first television like sequence now, so I'm gonna get my first TV credit really soon. But
Congrats.
I've just been kind of all over the place, like going on adventures with cameras and like interviews and everything. So
That's so cool,
yeah,
man. Right
yeah, good
on.
time. Yeah,
Right on,
awesome.
dude.
And hopefully around like that when the bass fishing one comes out, we can talk to you again and catch up and promote that as well.
I'm always down for it. That'd be great.
Awesome, man. Well, Andy, I hope you have a wonderful day and everything, and I'll keep in touch.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, cheers.
All right.
Hope you guys enjoyed that quick interview with Andy Palmer. Like we mentioned, the re-education of Molly Singer is in theaters right now and on digital on demand. Definitely check that out if you just want to turn off your brain for a bit and have a good laugh. Also, before we go, we got to thank all you legends on the Patreon page. First up, our boy Mike Carniello with the Testing with Mike YouTube channel. Check out Testing with Mike if you're into technology, electronics, how they work, and most importantly, how to fix them. Also, much love to Amanda McKnight of Top 10 Nerd. Beyond being the host of the multi-million subscribed channel Top 10 Nerd, Amanda McKnight also has her own personal channel that's absolutely awesome. Definitely check it out if you're into comic books, video games, film and television, and all things nerdy. Also, another thanks to the wonderful Jenny Potter, the legend Devin McBride, Ryan frickin' Campbell, my favorite soul singer, Saber, and last but not least, Francis Coffer, aka my mom. If you want to shout out at the end of every episode, and also get these episodes early, raw, and uncut, right when I'm done the Zoom call, I just post them, you can go to patreon.com/thecreative-imbalance. And beyond helping us out and forever having my thanks, you can go to bed at night just knowing you're a badass motherfucker who supports raw, uncut, independent media, and nobody can take that away from you. You hear me? And with that being said, we got a lot more interviews for you. I'm actually backed up. I'm having an anxiety attack. I got so much to edit and even more booked for the future. But around all that anxiety and stress, I'm having a good time. And I appreciate you guys listening. And we'll catch you next time. Boom.